What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration? The Prime Minister, Theresa May, says reducing the number of low-skilled workers coming to Britain from the EU is her number one priority. And we've learned today that ministers are considering plans to make workers apply for permits before they come here to fill job vacancies. This tough talk on immigration comes as the Office for National Statistics is due to publish figures showing that net migration for the year up to March reached more than 300,000. In short, record numbers of people are coming to Britain. And according to the political think tank British Future, the British public have never had less confidence in the government when it comes to their ability to control immigration. Well, this morning I want your reaction to this. I want your calls. What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration? What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration? The Prime Minister, Theresa May, says reducing the number of low-skilled workers coming to Britain from the EU is her number one priority. And we've learned today that ministers are considering plans to make workers apply for permits before they can come here to fill job vacancies. All of this tough talk on immigration comes as the Office for National Statistics is due to publish figures showing that net migration for the year up to March reached more than 300,000. In short, record numbers of people are coming to Britain. And according to the political think tank British Future, the British public have never had less confidence in the government when it comes to their ability to control immigration. Back in June, when she was the Home Secretary, Theresa May made it clear to the BBC that Brexit would not suddenly solve what some people would call the problem of mass immigration.
I completely understand why people are concerned about immigration. That's why I've been dealing with this as an issue over the last 6 years, and I had some battles on it in the coalition government, and we've made changes which have had an effect. But what I've learned over the 6 years is that there is no single answer. There's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that you can do that is suddenly going to deal with all the problems and concerns people have with immigration. And that includes leaving the EU. That's not the single answer to this issue. So pulling out of the EU isn't suddenly going to be the answer.
Well, not everyone agrees. We should just be cutting numbers. The Institute for Public Policy Research have told the BBC it would make sense for us to have different targets for low and high-skilled immigrants. And as an example of why this could be so important, they want to remind everyone that without the 55,000 EU nationals working in the NHS, our health service would collapse. Theresa May says her own target will be the same as David Cameron's, to reduce immigration to less than 100,000 people per year. He failed, but will she? And what would you like her target to be? This morning I want your calls, I want your reaction to this. What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration? What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration? Sundar Katwala is the director of British Future, an independent think tank. Good morning to you, Sundar. Thank you for coming on.
Good morning.
Morning. What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration then?
Well, I think the key point, we're just 2 months after the vote, and so there's a lot we don't know yet, is to recognise that public confidence and trust in how governments manage immigration really is very low. Obviously, big promises that haven't been kept are a big part of that. And to treat this now as an opportunity to think about how the Brexit shake-up might be a chance to get it right, to restore trust in a system that works and build public consent in the immigration that we're going to keep. And what our report shows is that public have pretty nuanced views about immigration. They'd actually like quite a lot less low-skilled immigration from Europe, and they wouldn't want to cut skilled immigration. They wouldn't want to cut immigration for the NHS, and they wouldn't want to cut the numbers of students. So the public have quite mixed views. And so Theresa May was right before the referendum to say there's not one, single magic bullet solution here, but it is an opportunity when everything is going to be put back in the mix to engage the public more in how we get the balance of those choices right.
Were you able to pinpoint any particular areas of the UK where concerns about immigration were at their highest? I mean, for example, are the concerns at their greatest in areas where immigration is at its greatest?
The areas that have the most people who are born abroad are less worried about immigration. London,
well, isn't that a bit odd?
And so on. It is a bit, but they have an experience of that people meet people and they know people. Areas that have had low immigration in the past and have had rapid increases in immigration have higher concerns about immigration. And I think that reflects some legitimate concerns about has government handled those pressures well? Has it put the resources in place to deal with that? Do we have good policies for integration? And some people who live in areas of low immigration are worried, and we could say, well, what's it got to do with you? But actually the question of how do you manage your borders? Do we have confidence in integration and a shared identity in an increasingly diverse society affect all of us? And the issues of whether people feel included in the gains of immigration. I think what most people think is there are pressures to handle in local areas. There are gains to things like the NHS, to companies that need migrants. That has to be handled fairly to people who come, but fairly to people who are here in the first place as well.
Sunder, thank you very much indeed. Sunder Katwala is the Director of British Future. Well, what do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration? As you've just heard from British Future, people are concerned about immigration and people do not have very much confidence in the government and their ability to resolve the so-called problem. But what do you want the government to do? I mean, what should they do about immigration? Do you feel that immigration is the big problem that many people consider it to be? It's very interesting to me that many parts of the UK that are the most angriest about the immigration levels in this in this country are parts of the UK where actually not so many immigrants go and live. Is that a bit odd? 03459 455 555. Chai Patel is from the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants. Good morning to you, Chai.
Good morning.
Morning. What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration?
Well, I think the conversation you had with Sunder just now, Sunder Katwala, was very interesting. And I completely agree with him that there needs to be a public conversation and a review of the way in which we manage immigration and manage pressures and restore public confidence. But one of the things I noticed was that you both talked a lot about, in your questions to the public, you talk a lot about feelings and what people think ought to happen based on their feelings. And I think it's very important to take public opinion about the pressures of immigration into account. But we've had far too much government policy on immigration in the past decades that's based on feelings that politicians have about what ought to be done, about what the problems are, about what the pressures are. And it's sort of thinking like that has led, for example, to David Cameron and Theresa May pursuing, this net migration target of bringing it down to the hundreds of thousands. We've seen no evidence that that's a good number.
Okay, so do you think people's feelings are wrong?
No, not at all. I think what we need is a review of immigration policy that looks at the evidence behind immigration,
well, isn't the evidence,
the pressures and the economic benefits.
Isn't the evidence that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people are coming to this country every year and it's just unsustainable?
That's not what the evidence is saying. The evidence is saying that you have evidence about the numbers of people who are coming, but the evidence about the benefits that migration is bringing to the country is fairly clear that it is a net positive to the UK. What is also clear, though, is that government hasn't been managing the immigration system very well. Public confidence has been affected by, for example, the fact that people don't necessarily see the benefits of immigration in their own lives because those benefits haven't been spread in the way we see an economic benefit as a country from immigration, but in certain areas people might see pressures and they might feel that the immigration system isn't doing enough for them. And that's why I do think we need to have a public conversation about what immigration means for the UK, what benefits it brings, and also how the government is going to deal with planning for the level of immigration that the UK needs.
But with the greatest of respect, Chai, you're talking a different language to the language that many of my listeners are talking, because they're not interested in all of that. All they want to do is to reduce the number of people coming here.
I mean, well, what we've seen, actually, which is very interesting, is that despite that kind of rhetoric being put out by politicians in the media year on year for the last decade, there was a recent Ipsos Mori poll that was put out, which actually polled people after the Brexit vote, which is very interesting, which shows that in the UK, attitudes towards immigration and the benefits of immigration have been growing steadily more positive over the last 5 years. So I think what people are realizing is that despite being told constantly by politicians and by the media that immigration is harmful, more and more people are seeing through that and are looking
Chai, do you live in London?
Other solutions.
Do you live in London?
I do.
I thought you did. With the greatest of respect, your attitude and the way you're talking is typically London-esque. I have been doing phone-in programmes on immigration on a weekly basis now for those 5 years that you talk about, and I promise you, the vast majority of people that contact my programme feel we have too many people moving here. That's the reality.
Well, that's, again, not what the people who phone in aren't necessarily representative of everyone who lives in the UK.
Oh.
And, you know, I live in London now.
So why did people vote for Brexit
before.
largely on the immigration issue just a few weeks ago?
Well, I don't think that tells you whether or not attitudes towards immigration are changing. I mean, we've still got...
Many people voted Brexit because they were very concerned that we had no control over the levels of immigration in this country, and that's why the majority of people voted Brexit.
And I have said that I think that that's something that needs to be addressed. As I said, I agree with Cinder that we need to do a lot more to talk about.
But you've just told me that actually it's not representative, and most people are thinking very positively about levels of immigration. And...
No, I'm sorry, that's not what I said. I didn't say that most people are thinking very positively about immigration. I'm saying that substantially more people are thinking positively about immigration than they were just a few years ago.
Do you think?
I think that's a very
let's break this
interesting
down.
phenomenon. Yeah.
Chai, let's just break this down. The people that say we need to reduce immigration levels, we need to reduce the numbers of people coming here, are they wrong?
I don't think that anyone knows, and that's what I was trying to say, is that we've been focusing on, you know, arbitrary targets of numbers. What we need to do is we need to have a public conversation, and that includes conversation with members of the public, but it also includes a conversation with experts and researchers, and I know that that's not always popular in a post-Brexit world, but about how our immigration system should work. And that means we should look at things that aren't just about numbers, but are about the way in which the system currently doesn't work. So we've got a system right now where the rules change constantly. They change constantly not based on the evidence of what's going to make things better, but on sort of feelings that politicians have or promises that they make because they think that will please the public. And that results in a system that's very complicated, that operates quite unfairly. We've got a system in which the Home Office constantly makes immigration decisions, which are then overturned on appeal. And recently, the solution to that has been to shut down appeal routes.
With the greatest of respect,
well, if you just let me finish, I think what I'm talking about is really about the fundamental principles that the immigration system
but I asked you a very
on.
direct question. With the greatest of respect, you keep talking about the politicians and what the politicians are doing and the rhetoric coming from politicians. And with the greatest of respect, you've just given me a classic politician response to a very simple question. I said to you, the people that are listening to my programme who feel we have too many immigrants coming to this country year after year, are they wrong?
And I did give you a clear response, which was that I don't think anybody knows.
So you don't know if they're wrong. So they might be right.
We don't know because no one has done.
Well, what do you think? Do you think they're wrong or do you think they're right?
As I said very clearly, I don't think we know. I think what we need over the next few months. Well, you asked me what we should do post-Brexit in immigration policy, and what I'm saying, and I think this is sort of one of the things that is typical of the way in which this debate is framed, is that people ask questions that no one knows the answers to.
But I think we surely need to have an opinion over the basics of it. Are there too many people coming to this country? If the answer is yes, most people think there are too many people coming to this country, then who do we not want to come to this country? If the answer is no, there are not too many people coming to this country, then what do we do about the levels of people that are coming? But when I've just asked you, do you think there are, frankly, too many people coming to this country, you say you don't know. And yet you're from the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants.
Well, at the moment, the evidence suggests that we need the people who are coming to the country.
Right. So people who say there are too many are wrong.
Yes. I mean, currently, in terms of the current migration statistics, they are. But
we've got the answer.
What we should do in the future, in terms of what we should do in the future, we don't know exactly how many people is an optimum number.
But Chai, there's nothing wrong with you having. There's nothing wrong with you having the opinion that you don't think there are too many people coming here. There are many people in this country that do not have a problem with the levels of immigration. But I just found it a bit strange that rather than say I don't think there's actually a problem with it, you said, well, no one really knows if there are too many people. Just stay there if you would, because David in Baldock has been listening to you. I gather he wants to speak. Good morning, David.
Hello, Jonathan.
Good morning.
The gentleman who's you're speaking to, all these people coming in, because we have got a serious problem with housing for years. So all these people are coming in. So you're basically saying to me that you think it's perfectly acceptable for people who come in this country are exploited by tenants and to have maybe 8, 10, 15 people living in a 4-bedroom house is quite acceptable. And in the future, where are all these people going to live? Because it's all right, people coming into this country who are bringing, whether it's the NHS, for example, that's fine. But they are being exploited where they live. I don't know how these people come in, particularly into London, actually manage to live, because I earn a blooming good salary, and there's no way I could live in London and live comfortably. So what's your answer to that? Because I think there is too many people coming in, not purely because we're against them coming into the country. It's a case of where the hell are they going to live and where they're going to go.
Chai, there's just not the infrastructure for all the people that are coming here.
Well, I mean, we haven't been building enough housing for many years.
And do that one.
That's not been something that's to do with immigration. I mean, areas that the evidence suggests that areas with high levels of immigration don't have significantly more housing problems, than others. But
well, hang on one second. The areas with the greatest level. Hang on, Chai. Let me pick you up on that point. The areas with the greatest levels of immigration do not have housing issues. Do you own a house?
Some of them do.
Do you own a house in London?
No, I don't. No.
Why not? I'll tell you why I don't own a house in London. Because I'm not a millionaire. And you have to be a millionaire to be able to afford... I mean, let's face it, even a 1-bedroom grotty flat in London costs an absolute fortune because there are so many people living in London. There's so much competition for every single property that property prices are enormous. So people can't afford to live in London.
And there's no evidence that cutting immigration would make that better. I mean, we need to build more houses. And, to be quite frank, a lot of houses and construction in this country right now is dependent on migrant labour.
I think you should stop using immigration as an example. Can I come in, Joe?
Yeah.
Stop. I think this guy needs to stop using immigration, because we're not all anti-immigration. The problem way before people started coming into this country was we were always short of housing, and it's going to continue. All what's happening is it's just adding to the big problem.
But you
that's
see,
already there.
But to be fair to Chai is not. He's saying that we need to address the problems that are caused because we have a shortage of housing, we have a shortage of doctors' spaces, we have a shortage of hospital beds and school places as well. He's saying all of that, but he's saying the argument should be framed around how we facilitate all of the people we have now here, rather than, well, stop bringing people over here, stop allowing people to move over here. Am I right in paraphrasing your view, Chai, in that way?
Yes, that is right.
Okay, so, I mean, that's exactly what Chai was saying, David. We need to build more houses, we need to build more doctors' surgeries and provide more hospitals.
Well, I've been around a little while in this country, and I've heard this so many times from government and conversations on chat shows for the last 25 years, probably, because if you look back to when we in the 70s and today, it's just unbelievable how much growth has gone with people coming to the countries. But the housing situation has never got hugely better, is it? And it still isn't. There's not enough money put into housing.
What do we do then? Do we cut the numbers of people that are coming here, or do we accept that there are lots of people that will be coming here for the foreseeable future, and we therefore need to accommodate those people? It's just, ideally, we build more properties, but that's not happening. But the infrastructure, I think, it's not just about a house, is it? It's about the roads and everything. I've been down into Cornwall recently for a holiday. Nice, I've been down there since I was
in the 20s. As soon as I got back towards the M3 and M25, it made me realise what a heavy area of congestion we've got. Just driving around, with the sport that we live in South East and London is a very prosperous area. But at the end of the day, the infrastructure just cannot cope with what's going on. And if we carry on like we are, must get to a point where you can't continue loading this area like we do, and maybe other areas in the country as well. I'm sure Manchester and probably Liverpool and Birmingham. I'm sure it's the same problem probably.
OK, thank you very much indeed, David, for your call. And thank you, Chai Patel from the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants. Simon Ross is the Chief Executive of Population Matters. Good morning to you, Simon.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Morning. What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration?
I think the target of tens of thousands, is a good target to have. Last 50 years, the population of England's gone up by a third. We're one of the most densely populated parts of Europe. And people are coming in at 600,000 a year. That's 6 million in 10 years. That's 30 million in 50 years. So if you don't do something about it, that's just going to keep on coming. And we need to stop. We obviously need to stop it.
But surely you would accept that if we're going to look at immigration, we have to be sensible. These are not people, largely. These are not people coming here to take benefits, to take money out of the system. These are people coming here for work opportunities. They're therefore putting money into our economy. They are doing jobs that lots of people in this country don't want to do. We have to accept that. The immigrants are not demons. They're not negative things for this country. They are positive people largely for this country.
Absolutely. They're hardworking, often very well qualified people for the jobs that they do. That's why they're coming here to do the jobs. That's why they're being employed, because they can do the jobs. And that's all well and good. But, it hits housing, it hits transport, it hits access.
So should we build more roads and more houses then?
No, what we should do is actually train the people working here to do the jobs. All the people, the 1.5 million who are unemployed, the 1.5 million who are doing low hours and would like to do more hours, all the people that retire early or that stay at home with kids because they can't get childcare. We actually should work at ensuring the people that we have can contribute productively, instead of this idea of, the easy option is just to bring in people, because more and more people is making life worse for us.
But lots of those people who are unemployed, yes, of course, you get genuine people who are in between jobs, perfectly capable of doing a job, perfectly capable of working hard, and indeed want to work hard. But you have to also accept the reality that there are some very lazy people who are out of work. They're not motivated to work. They haven't been brought up with any kind of work ethic whatsoever. And if you put them in the workplace, frankly, they'll do a lousy job.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some people like that, and I think the benefit system is getting tighter to try and discourage that sort of behaviour. But a lot of it is just lack of skills and opportunity. The government's doing stuff about apprenticeships now, which is great, but really for a long time, the whole thing of apprenticeships and technical education too has been really underdone in the UK compared with, say, Germany. We've been training people to be music, think that everyone can be DJs and music stars, where actually what we need to do is train people to do the jobs that there are.
Ultimately, we have an ageing population in this country because medicine is so much better. People are living right into their 80s and indeed their 90s. They're still retiring at 65, 66 or whatever. They're therefore taking pensions for years and years and years. We can't afford it as a country. Don't we need all of these younger immigrants coming over here, working, paying tax in order to pay for our ageing population?
You're absolutely right. People are living longer, but of course that just makes the population issue worse again because there's more people. I think the problem with addressing that with bringing in more migrants is, firstly, it's not enough. You'd have to bring in vast numbers to make up for the fact that people are living longer. And secondly, actually, they're going to get old too. So eventually you just make the problem worse in the future. You're just putting it off. I think we have to say that people, what used to happen was people retired at 60 and died at 70. Now you can't retire at 60 and have 30 years retirement. We can't afford that. I think we have to work a little bit longer. And in these days where so much work is done on the computer,
Chai Patel is from the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants. This morning he seemed to suggest that my listeners who say there are too many immigrants coming to this country are wrong. He suggested that, but wouldn't say it. Well, not without a lot of persuasion. When I've just asked you, do you think there are, frankly, too many people coming to this country, you say you don't know. And yet you're from the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants.
Well, at the moment, the evidence suggests that we need the people who are coming to the country.
Right. So people who say there are too many are wrong.
Yes.
Well, do you agree with Chai that there is no problem at all with the number of people coming here from abroad, and that we shouldn't be looking to reduce the numbers? Rather, what we should be doing is accepting the numbers and providing the resources, providing the houses, providing the infrastructure to accommodate those people. Marion in Hemel says, JVS, even if Farage was in charge, he wouldn't be able to reduce migration as much as some people think. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago you had a person text in saying they voted leave in the referendum because they wanted absolutely no immigrants? I do remember that person. Sean is in Luton. Good morning to you, Sean.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Morning, Sean. What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration?
Well, first of all, let me say, Jonathan, when I was listening to Chai, I just couldn't believe what that guy was saying, because to me it was like the Remain campaigners all over again, basically telling us that we don't know and we don't fully understand what's going on in this country. And that, according to Chai, if I got this wrong, then, that's the way I interpret what he was saying. He's talking about unlimited immigration. And then he starts talking about the infrastructure, about we haven't got the housing, et cetera, et cetera. Jonathan, how many manifestos have you listened to or gone through in your years where the incoming governments, they all promise to build more houses, better railways, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but it never happens? The fact is that we are going to have too many people in this country. Now, there are certain people that we do need, certain with skills. For example, I was in the local hospital on Saturday for a minor operation on a day ward. Now, that was totally staffed by what I would say immigrant labour.
Non-British labour.
I from South Africa. So what I'm trying to say is that there are certain skills that we need, definitely, but you can't have all this unlimited skilled people coming in.
But Sean, the thing I would say to you is, I have many friends who are EU migrants who come here. I mean, my brother is married to a Polish girl.
Sure.
So I know absolutely lots and lots of people who've come here from the EU. I don't know a single person who has come here from the EU that is a negative effect on our country, who is a drain on our country, who is someone we would rather not have in our country. Every single person I know, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, all of my friends who are EU migrants are a wonderful addition to this country. Now, isn't that part of the problem? That if we're talking about reducing numbers, we're talking about reducing numbers of people like my friends. People who are moving here, who just want to work hard. They want to work in a country that rewards them better for their hard work. They want to work in a country that they can be proud of because they feel as if the country is kind of heading in the right direction. All those various reasons for people wanting to move to this country. So who, if we're going to reduce the numbers, and you obviously want us to reduce the numbers, who do we stop coming here?
Well, what I agreed with during the Brexit campaign is the point system that Nigel Farage was on about. And as regards the work permit scheme, I don't know. I've never really looked into that because it's something that never even crossed my mind. But we cannot just keep taking people in. I've got no doubt there are many, many people coming into this country, hundreds of thousands, who genuinely want a better way of life. They want a better standard of living. But they all can't get a job, Jonathan. That's the point. So if we keep bringing in people...
But how many immigrants are out...
What do they do then?
But how many immigrants are out of work?
Well, I don't know. I haven't got the stats on that.
I mean, if we look at EU migration, the number of EU migrants who are on out-of-work benefits, so therefore we can presume haven't got a job, 2%. So 98% of all of the migrants that have come to this country from the EU, we can presume they're all working. Now,
right. But what about, Jonathan, the figures published in the local papers last week? Apparently there's about 2,600 people on the unemployment register here in Luton. Now, I'm not saying that they're all lazy people and, they don't want to get out of bed. But why can't we get these people, like one of your listeners was saying earlier on, why can't they be retrained to do something? Why can't they be retrained to do perhaps a different type of job? So why do we need to bring in 2,600 people into Luton when we've already got 2,600 claiming benefits? Wouldn't it be far beneficial to the country if we can get these guys off a benefit? Then we wouldn't have to ask 2,600 foreigners from the EU to come in and take their place.
Do you also believe, I take the point that you feel we need to have a control, we need to reduce those numbers of people that are coming here. But
Sure.
do you also believe that we have to embrace the immigrants that are living in this country, that have made this country their own, and we need to, rather than complaining that we can't get a doctor's appointment because the waiting room's full of immigrants, what we need to do is ask the government to provide more doctors?
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, if I can give you a brief example of my surgery, I won't mention the name of it, but 5 years ago, they had something like 8,000 patients. Now, I was told this by one of the staff in there. The last count, I think it was January, there was 13,000 people on the books. No surgery can sustain that sort of pressure. That's an extra 5,000 people on one tiny little surgery here in Luton.
Yeah.
Let's be fair, Johnson. Most of the people will eventually go to the L&D for whatever reason. And I think that's the problem, where the people are clogging up the system, for want of a better word. I'm not saying they don't want to work hard, but they do get ill, and they will get ill. So therefore it will reduce you seeing your doctor at a specific time, and it's going to get worse and worse.
I guess in many ways, many immigrants have a very valid argument that they've been let down by successive governments. Because, if I was someone who had moved to this country from elsewhere, and from the minute I came here, I was working, I was paying my taxes,
Sure.
I was, driving my car and filling my car up with British petrol.
You deserve recognition.
Exactly. And if I was to say, well, hang on a minute, I'm over here, I'm putting all this money in, and all I get is, oh, you're part of the problem. There's too many of you over here. You should all go back to your country where you came from because you're a drain on resources. Surely many of those immigrants have a very valid argument to say, no, what the government should have done is use some of the money that I'm paying in my taxes to provide more doctors, to provide more roads, to provide more trains.
Jonathan, you and I could agree with this all day, but the fact is that they're not. I mean, whether you like it or not, the last Tory government under Cameron and Osborne, all it was cut back all the time, and yet more people were coming in. So yes, the government needs to put more money into the system, and yes, we must recognise hard-working immigrants, and they do deserve, shall we say, social housing. But they shouldn't get social housing above somebody who's genuinely waiting for a house here in Luton that's been born and bred here. I think that's where the system, there's a hiccup in the system again.
Okay. Good to talk to you, Sean. Thank you very much for your call. Adrian has called to have his say. Hello, Adrian.
Oh, hello there.
Hi, what are your thoughts on this?
Really deep. Well, I'm an immigrant. Actually, I'm a foreign. Immigrant requires a visa. I'm a foreign. I come from Romania. I'm here for about 10 years, and since I'm here, I've worked every single day. I pay my tax. I prove myself. In 2007, I've worked about 3 years night shifts on petrol station, studying at the same time to achieve this blue card as a work permit. I wasn't agree on that time with this law, but now I do. I prove myself. They know who I am. They know what I've done, and look at me now. 10 years down on the road, I managed to do my level 3 gas course in plumbing and work hard. So I think they should bring back this regulation of those rules of work permits. Prove yourself, show us who you are, and
But by your own admission, you said when you first came to the country, you were working in a petrol station doing the night shift. and you were
studying
studying
university as well in the morning.
You were studying at the same time. But you see, a lot of this talk today is from Theresa May about reducing the number of low-skilled workers coming here. Now, that could potentially have included you.
Yes, that's true. And not, because I become skilled now. I'm a gas
Yes,
engineer.
now
Am I
you've become
skilled or not?
skilled. Yeah, now you've become skilled, but you weren't skilled when you first moved here.
Exactly, but I proved myself through the goodwill of becoming a British citizen or good intention to stay and live in UK. Well, now the Prime Minister, she wants to answer to this question, who was the first, the egg or the chicken? You will never answer to this question, shall we reduce the immigrants or not? Because, now talking straight away with you, how often you go on a construction site?
Very rarely. Very rarely.
Well, the amount of materials that they are through into a construction site, you may build another neighborhood. So who's covering those costs? A cheap labor.
Well, we know that most construction sites are now largely filled with people that are coming here from countries like Romania. But do you think that's a problem?
Yes. Well, there is not a problem there. It's deeper. In order to cover those waste of materials, and I'm talking about thousands of pallets of bricks per month in each construction site, that is thrown and skipped. How can those companies they cover the costs by cheap labor and putting the price up on the houses? This is how they cover. The price of a house to be built in UK is about £70,000. Yeah,
Adrian, I'm sorry to change the subject slightly with you, but I'm just interested to before I let you go, explore one other thing with you. When Romanians first started coming to the UK, and actually Nigel Farage, who we're going to discuss a little later on, he was very vocal about this. I remember Nigel Farage saying, now Romania's coming over here, we're going to be in big trouble. All these Romanians are going to come over. There's all these criminals, all criminal gangs full of, and there was it was very, very anti-Romanian rhetoric coming from the likes of Nigel Farage. Right. You're obviously a decent guy. You're here, you're working hard, you're contributing. I think everybody listening to the programme would probably, think that you are a real asset to this country. But do you think some of your fellow countrymen and women have been as helpful to this country, or do you know Romanians who, frankly, have been a drain on our nation? Yes,
I've met some thieves, let's say, that were stealing from the pocket, and I said, well, I don't want to talk to you. You look like that. There are 10 Romanians that they prove themselves, and they are really hard-working chaps, and comes a pickpocket, a thief from the pocket, and police caught them in action, and they put those 10 Romanians down because they catch a thief. Yes, I've met one of them, and we are judged by those thieves. We are not judged by our achievements. But the vast majority of Romanians, I would hope, are like you in this country. Oh, yeah, no, 90% or 95% are like that. Well, I would hope so. Hang on 1 second. Don't move a muscle. Don't move a muscle. Let me bring Mark in. He apparently wants to talk to you. Good morning, Mark.
Hello, it's more to you, really. I'm getting sense with you. I mean, yes, you might have good friends and everything. The balance of workers coming into this country is going. They come in and take a job which would already be done by a British person. That's the way agencies are just taking them on. You're getting the balance. People, like, when you have these people come in, they're willing to work. They'll work 7 days a week. We have, over the years, have worked to get a balance of work, of home life and work. And these people are just coming here, and companies just want people, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And all you're doing is pushing people out of their jobs. And these people
like who? People like who? What industry do you work in?
Right, okay, you want to go down that one. Right, brilliant.
It's not a matter of going down that one. You're challenging me. I'm asking you what line of work you work in.
Okay, I'm in the commercial transport industry, right? And we're getting flooded, absolutely flooded. Now, I heard something the other day about the drive. We're getting flooded with drivers that have not got the skills we pay a lot of money to get in this country. We have to, when I did it, it cost me about £1,300. They're coming over here with licences that are second grade to ours. Now, I heard something the other day, there's a person in our area, sending them into Holland, they're getting their licences here, and then coming over here and then driving. Now, I reckon there's a backhanded deal going on there, that they're not coming over here fully qualified. And when you see them driving around this country, they are absolutely atrocious.
But there are things we could, if there is a genuine concern over the levels of the quality of drivers that are driving now in this country from the EU, then we should improve standards. We should put further tests in place.
Those are just letting it go. I have talked to them, and they say.
But why are you blaming immigrants for what you, by your own admission, surely should be blaming VOSA for?
Well, we should be paying it's all down to the government for letting them in the first place. You keep letting them in, and all it does is keep knocking down the English workers. But
hang on 1 second. You say it's knocking down the English workers.
Hold on. If you've got 2 million jobs here and you've got 2 million people already using them, right? You bring in another 500,000 people. Where are those 500,000 jobs? They end up taking the English person's job.
Mark, what job do you do?
I'm a HGV driver, and I absolutely, embarrassed to even say that anymore.
Why?
Because the standard driving in this country is rubbish amongst the English, but the foreigners that come in here, and we're not talking just the trucks that come into it, we're talking them taking over English driving jobs.
So if you were in charge then, if you could get a message to the government, then your argument would be reduce the number of immigrants that are coming over here to work as drivers.
They should do, like in Canada and America, they should do an English driving test before they get loose with an English lorry.
Fine. So if that's something that needs to happen, then that should be introduced.
They won't do it because they want the workers.
Who wants the workers?
And the government. They want because.
But the government has.
short.
Okay. But if the government want if the government want the workers, if the government want all these people, but if there is a problem caused by these people because their driving standards are not as good as, for example, a British person's driving standards, then surely what the government should be doing, and what you should be saying in answer to our question when I ask, what do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration? You should be saying they should employ extra tests for migrant workers that are working in the construction industry or in HGV driving, to make sure that their driving is up to the same standard.
But it's us being in Europe. See, we play by the rules. We always have done. You go abroad and they bend the rules. They do not, but like yellow high-vis and walking in places where food is done. You're not supposed to have, you're supposed to have shoes on. You go out there. They don't have all this on. They'll walk around food areas with flip-flops on. They do not abide by the rules of the European Union. They bend them left, right, and centre.
Mark, you're obviously very angry about your experiences.
I am because the thing is, like I say to company owners, it's our job now. It's your job next. And when your sons or grandsons can't get jobs, look in the mirror, and you're the ones to blame.
What is that supposed to mean?
Well, they're the ones that are all employing them and bringing them over. Companies are bringing them over.
Have you got a job?
Yeah, but it won't last much longer, I'm sure of it, because there's too many these people.
But Mark, people say, all these immigrants coming over in the construction industry, every single plumber, carpenter, electrician I know that you try and get round to your house to come and do a job, you've got to wait weeks, if not months, for them to be able to do a job. They're so busy.
Do you know what I get told? Right now, I want some sort of standard of living, right? So I choose that I want to be at home at some couple of nights a week, yeah? You know what I mean? Now I get told, well, they'll go and do the job, they'll stay out all week. So now I get blackmailed into trying to do my job. If you don't do it, we'll just get a foreigner in that will do it.
So
That's what you're getting told.
Are you hoping then that as a result of Brexit, we're now going to see immigration reduced significantly?
Because the government will baffle figures, because when they say immigration, they then start talking about worldwide immigration, right? But the main immigration we need to sort out is the European Union immigration. We have, because we've been part of the Union.
How much do you want it to fall to?
You won't like what I would say to it.
Go on. Answer my question.
For every British person that leaves the country, bring one in. That is it.
One in, one out.
Well, yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you very much. By the way, we've just learnt that the net migration has fallen by 9,000 people to 327,000 up until March of this year. So still way over what the government say they want to get it down to, but less than the year before. Marley Morris is the Research Fellow in Migration at the Institute for Public Policy Research. Good morning to you, Marley.
Good morning.
Hi, very briefly then, final word on this to you. What do you think our post-Brexit government should do about immigration?
Well, I think it depends on the type of immigration we're talking about. As you were previously discussing, there are lots of different flows of immigration, and the public clearly have very different views on different types. So the public generally aren't that worried about students or high-skilled migration, but there are more concerns about low-skilled migration. So I think a first step is to disaggregate this net migration target, which at the moment is very crude, which lumps together all types of migration, and split it up into different categories so that you can properly reflect what the public care about.
So is that ultimately giving what many people have asked for, this points-based system where we kind of we look at the areas where we need people and the areas where we don't need people, and then we pick and choose?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, we have that system currently with non-EU migrants. So now Britain has voted to leave the EU, there may be some more flexibility about how to manage EU migration, but that will depend on the negotiations that the government will have with the EU over Brexit. But crucially, it can't just be the case that the negotiations end in a complete restriction in all forms of low-skilled workers, because that will mean a massive impact on sectors that are currently reliant on low-skilled EU migration, like food processing, construction, hospitality, and that would mean that those sectors will really suffer.
Marley, thank you very much. Marley Morris from the Institute for Public Policy Research. Stella from Luton says, I'm very glad that immigrants are taking over jobs that lazy English people don't want to do. It's absolutely appalling that people moan and complain about immigration, but don't point fingers at their own scrounging fellow citizens. It's disgusting and insulting to hard-working and committed people who want to better their lives. It's not immigration that's the issue. It's the attitude of British people towards immigration. That's the biggest issue.
Travel news for beds, hearts and bucks.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Anti-clockwise, the M25 running slow after an earlier breakdown, 25 to 24, Keys back to 26 at Waltham Abbey. Also M1 southbound heavy going around junction 12 for Flitwick, and also no fuel available southbound at Newport Pagnell services. A1M southbound slow going 8 to 7 to Stevenage down towards Stevenage South, and the airport approach road delays going in from the Holiday Inn roundabout. Justin Peterson, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam tweets me to say, I drive for a laundry company that services hotels, etc. I average 10 hotels a day and I see less than 3 UK workers. We need immigration, says Adam. Thank you. A photo showing armed French police forcing a woman to remove her burkini on the beach has caused controversy around the world. Well, you can be forgiven for having never heard of the burkini just a few years ago, but now it's being discussed on virtually every programme and in every single newspaper across Europe and beyond. In fact, Marks and Spencer's reported yesterday that they've now sold out of all the burkinis that they have in stock. If you've not seen them, they're basically all over cotton wetsuits which cover every part of your body apart from your hands and your feet. They're most commonly worn by Muslim women who believe it's modest not to show their body and their hair in public. Rudy Sales is deputy mayor of the French beach resort in Nice. She's complained that Muslims have lived happily in France for years without feeling the need to wear burkinis, which she describes as political symbols of Islamism. A desire to put Islam ahead of everything else in your life as you struggle against the non-believers. She's told the BBC it's not done. It's not the done thing to cover up in Nice, and everyone should respect that. However, the designer of the burkini, Aheda Zanetti, argues the bikini is a symbol of freedom, as it allows women who previously may not have felt comfortable on the beach to go out and enjoy it like everyone else. Selina Jan Mohammed is a British hijab-wearing author who wrote the book Love in a headscarf. She's told the BBC that France boasts about its commitment to liberty, whilst at the same time dictating what people can and cannot wear.
It seems that the irony of pronouncing liberty and then forcing women to dress in a particular way has been completely lost on the French politicians and the French media. I mean, it's such dangerous territory we're going into that we have armed policemen forcing women, apparently, to take off their clothes.
Well, I want to hear your thoughts on this morning. Do you think the French were right to ban the burkini? You could be forgiven for having never heard of the burkini just a few years ago, or perhaps months ago, but now it's being discussed on virtually every programme and in every single newspaper across Europe and beyond. In fact, Marks and Spencer reported yesterday that they've now sold out of all the bikinis they had in stock. If you haven't seen them, they're basically all over cotton wetsuits, which cover every part of you other than your hands and your feet and your face. They're most commonly worn by Muslim women who believe it's modest not to show their body and their hair in public. Rudy Salles is the deputy mayor of the French beach resort Nice, the first place to ban the burkini. She's complained that Muslims have lived happily in France for years without feeling the need to wear burkinis, which she describes as political symbols of Islamism, a desire to put Islam ahead of everything else in your life as you struggle against the non-believers. She's told the BBC it's not the done thing to cover up in Nice, and everyone should respect that. However, the designer of the burkini, Aheda Zanetti, argues the burkini is a symbol of freedom, as it allows women who previously may not have felt comfortable on the beach to go out and enjoy it like everyone else. Well, my question to you this morning, do you think the French were right to ban the burkini? Or are you horrified at what they've done? Anne-Marie Waters is from Sharia Watch UK. Good morning to you, Anne-Marie. Thank you for coming on.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
What do you think about France's decision to ban the burkini then? Were they right to do it?
Yeah, I think, the ban on the burqa in general is something that I strongly favour. You know, it's looking at that picture of the police forcing this woman. It seems counterintuitive. It's not a pleasant sight. It's uncomfortable for me as a libertarian to tell people what to wear, but the whole thing has to be put into perspective and into context. It is a symbol of religious extremism. I agree with what you read out from that lady. It is a symbol of religious extremism. France is a secular country. I'm a secularist. I'm relieved to see France asserting its secularism because it has been under attack. France has been violently attacked in the name of this religion in the last couple of years, 3 times in the last couple of years, and its values, its secularism have been attacked directly in Paris. And what it has to do is assert those values again. And while individual incidents can seem uncomfortable and counterintuitive to us, it has to be put into perspective. France must assert its secularism. I'm relieved that it is.
Let me bring Zab Mustafa in, who's a British Muslim journalist. Good morning, Zab.
Good morning.
Good morning. What do you think of what Anne-Marie Waters has just said then? She feels that the burkini is a symbol of Islamism, and that in itself is a good reason in a secular country to ban it, to stop it happening. And as uncomfortable as it may be to watch, enforcing that ban is necessary.
Well, I'm actually laughing at how ridiculous her comments are. We need to remember that in the Cannes attacks, at least 25 Muslims were killed. And when you talk about terrorism, remember that ISIS has killed more Muslims than anyone else. So linking that as how many women in a burkini have carried out a terrorist attack that you're saying it's a symbol of extremism? And why are white people so concerned with how Muslim women dress? If it's our choice to do it, we're choosing to wear that. Nobody's forcing us. We're choosing to wear a burkini if we want. The idea of likening an item of clothing such as the burkini to terrorism is a disgrace. These people need to stop politicising Muslim women and their bodies. And forcing a woman to take off her clothes is just as bad as forcing her to cover up. France is forcing fundamentalist secularism on Muslim women who are already being ostracised in this day and age with the rise of Islamophobia across Europe.
Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. You know, by the way, you know, white people have a right to have an opinion on things as well, and to argue for secularism, which is the keeping of religious extremism out of a public space.
But you don't get to tell me how to dress.
Primitive notions about women's bodies are things that...
Sorry, if you both talk at once, I can't hear you.
These primitive notions about women's bodies are ideas that the European women fought to defeat, and we have absolutely every right to speak out in favour of secular space and against primitive notions about modesty and women's bodies. And the idea, I mean, you may laugh, but I'm laughing at the idea that because Muslims get killed in terror attacks, those attacks have got nothing to do with Islam. This is absolutely absurd. The people who are carrying out these attacks are telling us they're doing it in the name of Islam.
But the people who are carrying...
Some know best.
Sorry, Anne-Marie, the people who are carrying out these attacks, they're not walking around wearing burkinis, are they? So why target a burkini?
It is the same religious extremism. The misogyny that derives from this religion, the covering up of women to this extreme is a part of it. They come from the same ideology. Ideologically are coming from the same place. And the same defense to that is secularism, an assertion of secularism. And as I said, I'm relieved that France is doing so.
Zab?
But the irony is that you're saying this is freedom, but a woman at gunpoint is forced to undress. That's the irony of it.
Well, hang on one second. She wasn't at gunpoint. They were not pointing a gun at her. Come on.
Can I finish what I'm saying?
Yes, but tell the truth then. The police were not pointing a gun at her.
Muslim women not so long ago attempted to organise a private burkini pool party, but they got death threats. Now, if they go on onto a beach, they're forced to undress. They had guns there. You saw the pictures, and they're forced to undress before being fined. No other religious group has been targeted. Nuns are allowed to wear their attire on the beach. You can still wear a full wetsuit, but not a burkini. Why is that?
Ultimately, just to address the point you made about the police, hang on one second. I just want to address this because you said, Zab, that a woman at gunpoint had to take her burkini off. The police were not pointing a gun at her. The police in France all carry guns. They happen to have a gun on the side of them in the holster. They were not using that gun or threatening that lady with a gun in any way.
Okay, so if I'm on a beach and three men come up to me with massive guns and tell me that I have to take my clothes off, are you telling me as a Muslim woman that wouldn't be quite...
But why was she wearing the bikini in the first place when it has been banned?
Look, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. It's enforcement of the law. It's enforcement of.
Hang on, I want Zab to answer that question. You talk about at gunpoint. This woman, she knew that there was a ban on wearing the bikini on the beach, and she wore a bikini on the beach.
On that note, there are a bunch of British women that are going to go to France. They know that the bikini is banned in solidarity with these women. They're going to go to beaches in France and they're going to do that on the 10th of September and wear bikinis in solidarity.
Do you think that's a good thing to do?
Banned. Of course it is. Why not?
Really? So all the laws that I have a problem with, I should just get a whole bunch of other like-minded people in this country and we should just go and break that law just to make a point. I mean, that's the way
The point is that this is preposterous.
The point is that firstly, what the French decide to do in their country is down to the French, and it's not down to a bunch of British women to go over and start breaking French law. We should be a bit more respectful.
If you let me finish, banning the bikini for all women, all Muslim women, is a joke. That's what it is. Banning the burkini is a symbol of targeting and ostracising Muslim women. So making a point against that, well, I'm in favour of it. Of course I am.
Even if that involves going to another country and breaking their laws.
Well, we'll
how
see
rude.
What happens how rude. It's funny that it's not rude to force women to undress in such a way. It's funny that it's not rude, is it, when you ostracise Muslim women in such a way, telling them how to dress, which is classed as a freedom. But for everyone else, it's now...
And Anne-Marie Waters, it is rude to make a woman undress in this way on the beach.
Rude? rude, okay. I mean, but there are worse things than rude. As I said, this whole situation isn't a comfortable one, but put it into perspective. This is, and by the way, it's the law. We have to enforce the law. The burqa is banned in France. The burkini is banned. We have to enforce the law.
Well, only in certain places and on beaches, for example.
To wear this thing. I mean, I can bet some of these women think they're feminists. And what they're actually doing is colluding in primitive notions about women's bodies and about modesty. This thing is banned for a reason. We should respect that reason. It's an important one.
But not every woman who wears a burkini is a Muslim. I mean, Nigel Lawson famously was pictured on a beach a couple of years ago wearing a burkini, wasn't she?
So I hear. I didn't see those pictures. Look, it doesn't matter whether Nigella Lawson wears them or not. They're banned. The law should be enforced. The law is there for a very good reason. Enforce it. We scarcely do enforce our law, so I applaud us when we do.
Would you like to see a similar ban in this country, Anne-Marie?
Absolutely, absolutely. And for all the reasons that I've just said. But, we don't live in a world where this isn't happening in a vacuum. Islamic extremism is growing increasingly violent. Attacks in Europe are increasing. It's important that we assert some sort of fight back against this. And it's a minor thing in comparison to what we're facing, but it's an important thing. It's an assertion of our values.
Zab, do you accept that France has the right to defend its secularism, and that may involve banning items of clothing associated with a very conservative expression of a religion?
No, I don't accept that at all. If you're free, then if you're a feminist as well, this primitive notion that you're saying, if you're a feminist, then surely you should support a woman's right to wear what she wants, even if you don't agree with it. You should have the right to wear what you want. And if a burkini isn't harming anyone, it's not harming freedom, it's not harming secularism, it's a woman's choice to wear it.
But, okay, it's a woman's choice to wear it now, but I guess the concern is that if the burkini is allowed to be worn on the beach, then in 10, 15, 20 years' time, if more and more women are wearing a burkini, will those women that don't want to wear a burkini, will they be in the minority? And will they feel in some way as if they need to cover up?
I highly doubt that. That notion is, I highly doubt that would happen. A Muslim woman, in France alone, when the actual burqa ban was enforced, fewer than 1,000 women in the country wore the burqa. That speaks volumes. It's a minority of women who are being marginalised. They're being deliberately targeted in this day of age of Islamophobia.
To be honest, it's apart from anything else, it doesn't sound very comfortable to me. I mean, when you are hot, when you're in the sunshine, when you're on a beach which is generally sandy, surely the fewer clothes you have on, the more comfortable you'll be.
So should I just go to the beach naked? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, because obviously there has to be a level of taste and decency, and unless you're on a naturist beach, then you need to cover up your genitalia.
Perhaps those who wear the burkini don't feel that way. Maybe that's just you that feels it could be uncomfortable. Maybe the women that are wearing it feel very comfortable in it.
Is it comfortable? I remember I once got very sunburnt on a holiday, and I was told that I should wear a T-shirt when I was in the water, and it was absolutely horrible swimming with a T-shirt on. It felt most uncomfortable.
But the material designed in this item of clothing is for a beach. That's why it's called a burkini.
Let me put a question to you that some people are raising on text, Zab, and I'm interested to get your response, because they're arguing that all France is doing is standing up for its secularist belief that you should be on the beach in a certain attire, which would generally be for a woman either in a bikini or in a swimming costume. In the same way that if you or I were to go to Saudi Arabia, we would be expected to dress in accordance with the culture over there. Do you accept that point?
In the same way, if you go to the United Arab Emirates, which is a Muslim country, you see women on the beach. Some are covered up, some aren't. There are no police officers with guns patrolling about there. In the same way, when you go to Jordan or Palestine, to the beaches in these areas, If you want to cover up, you can. If you don't, you wear a bikini.
OK, very interesting listening to both of you arguing this one out. Over to you then, listening. What do you think? Do you think the French were right to ban the burkini? Do you think it was absolutely acceptable for them to turn round and to say, look, in Nice, for example, women do not cover themselves up from head to toe when they're on the beach. Women wear bikinis, they wear swimming costumes, they wear appropriate beachwear, and in this country we do not consider the burkini to be an acceptable bit of swimwear. Was that acceptable for them to say that? Or do you think it's outrageous to dictate what people can and cannot wear on a beach? Do you think the French should be ashamed of themselves? Do you hope very much that we never see a similar ban in this country? Alison says, I find it appalling that anyone is told what they can or can't wear on a beach in Europe in this day and age. I'm 56 and no supermodel and would happily wear something which covered me from top to toe. My granddaughter will only swim in a full-length wetsuit, even at the local pool, because she's so body conscious. What's the difference, really? It's only the people stirring up a frenzy about it being a religious statement who've made it become that. I honestly don't see it as that. It's just that some ladies prefer to dress that way. Well, I'm interested to hear your views, whether you agree with Alison or whether you think the French were absolutely right to ban it. Wasim in Buckinghamshire. Good morning, Wasim.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Hello. What do you think about the French decision to ban the bikini? Was it acceptable?
I would go with the lady who texts Alison. Is the way it comes through is really, really appalling, to be honest. It should not be this way.
Why? What's wrong with banning it? What's wrong with saying, in France on the beach, we do not cover from head to toe, so we'd really rather not see it. Thank you very much.
It's in a modern world, when you got right for everything, obviously there's a right, and she has had all the rights, whatever she wants to wear, whatever she doesn't want to wear.
So in all the Muslim countries around the world, then people have that right, do they, to wear whatever they want?
Most of them, yeah.
Right. So if a woman was to go to Dubai, for example, and wanted to dress in skimpy clothing, would that be acceptable?
It is acceptable in certain areas, yeah, it is.
And not in every area?
Not everywhere, no.
Well, isn't that exactly what the French are saying? They're saying you can wear what you want, but on the beach we don't want you wearing a bikini.
Yeah, I do understand that, but the way it's not a religious country. France is not a religious country.
No, it's a secular country, and they're very passionately secular.
And the B is... I do understand that. If it was banned, I wasn't aware of if it's banned or not, but if it was banned, you could have taken her away from that. If you're not allowed to wear this, or you can go away from it, you're not allowed to use this facility, but you can't really... You know what? The way it's been posted is a woman is surrounded by an armed police officer, forcing her to take her clothes off, which was like, for her, it's for her modesty. So I could understand that. If it was banned, fair enough. You should have taken her away from that place, say you're not allowed to use this facility, that's fine. But you can't just really... It's like...
Well, I presume they gave her the choice. I presume they said to her, either you leave the beach or you take that bikini off.
But the way it's been posted, it looks like for her, it's like a sexual assault. So
like a sexual assault? What are you talking about?
Yeah, it is. Because for a religious woman, taking her clothes off in front of everyone on the beach, for them, it's a sexual assault. That's why they're not comfortable doing this.
Have you any idea what you're saying? A woman taking her clothes off on the beach, taking off a burkini, is like a sexual assault.
For her, it's an assault. Whether you take it as a sexual assault or physical assault, it's like a mental assault. It's like an assault. So for all the human rights, I think that was totally and utterly wrong.
Right. Okay, Wasim, thank you very much. Leslie in Henlow. Hello, Leslie.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I personally am very much in agreement with the gentleman that you've just been speaking to. For I think it was 3 armed policemen to approach a lady on the beach, and whether she's wearing a bikini or not must be a pretty terrifying thing. It is, I think, in my opinion, it's a very silly law, and I would encourage all the ladies in France, whether they are Muslim or not, to get a bikini and go down on that beach and make a demonstration. It's a bad law. It is an infringement of that lady's right.
Well, you're absolutely right that if the French want to do that, then I think that's perfectly acceptable. If the French want to protest about a law in their own country, then they should be absolutely right to do it. What I object to is the suggestion that was made earlier that lots of British women should go over to France and should protest as well. It's not down to us to start poking our nose into French affairs. It's down to them. And it's rude. And if other people came from another country here and started staging some kind of mass protest, we would be offended.
Yeah, I suppose if I'm honest, if I felt strongly about it, I might go and wear a bikini on the beach, but I don't feel that strongly about it, and I wouldn't be offended.
But what is so wrong with saying? But what's so wrong with saying, look, in France on the beach, we don't wear bikinis. We don't. Women wear swimming costumes or bikinis. They don't cover themselves from head to toe. Because
France is part of the free world where you can just about do whatever you want, really. And on beaches, people do wear what they want. And I don't think it's right to do that. I think it's very discriminatory. I don't think it would happen in this country, and I certainly don't think in this country, even if we did have a silly law like that you have police officers going up to this lady and forcing her to take her clothes off on the beach. They should have just, if they felt so strongly about it, they should have just given her the equivalent of a parking ticket or something like that. To do that was a horrendous breach of her human rights and probably an extremely frightening experience for everybody on the beach around her, let alone her.
Why was she wearing a bikini on the beach, knowing that it's been banned?
Well, I'm glad she made that protest because she probably felt very strongly.
If she was protesting, then you still feel the same level of sympathy for her.
Absolutely, because I think, in essence, it's a bad law, and bad laws have to be protested against, don't they, in order to get them changed or to get them taken away. Otherwise, in this life, change relies upon the unreasonable person, the person who stands up for their rights or fights for the rights of others, and that's what that lady was doing, and I admire her.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Tim in Aylesbury. Hello, Tim.
Good morning to you, Jonathan.
Good morning, Tim. What would you like to say?
Well, it's really to do with the argument to do with the bikini. I'm ex-cabin crew, and you had a gentleman just now who was talking about the ladies being able to wear what they wished. In places like Riyadh and Jeddah, there is something called the Matawa, which are the religious police. Ladies, i.e., let's say cabin crew, if they're ladies, they must wear an abaya when they go out. They are not allowed to show any flesh whatsoever, i.e., above your wrist or your ankles. The Matawa have sticks, which they then use, and these are canes. So the offending part is hit with a stick, and in extreme cases, they're actually arrested, taken away. And one of our girls was arrested. She was from the Egyptian crew, so fortunately spoke Arabic, and it was almost a diplomatic incident regarding her arrest and taken to the prison.
It's fascinating. I wonder if all these British women that are planning to go over to France and buy bikinis and wear bikinis on the beach, I wonder if they feel strongly about going to Jeddah and dressing in skimpy clothing and walking down the street to stick up for women's rights.
Well, my father was in the forces. He was told when he went to certain countries, you have to abide by the rules and the laws of that country. As a member of the cabinet, ex-member of the cabin crew, we were also told you have to abide by the laws and the rules and regulations of those countries, whether you agree or disagree with them. France is a secular country. That should be, people should abide by those rules and regulations. By all means, do protest. The lady in question that's caused this concern on the beach noticed that, the bikini was taken off, but she did have whatever it was underneath. However, as a Muslim lady, if she's taking off that, surely she is now exposing herself to the public, and in my estimation, should move off the beach and cover herself up again, not continue to stay on the beach. That side of it, I didn't understand at all.
I'm so pleased you phoned in and told this story, because it really does. When I think back to the point that's now been made by Leslie and by one of my guests I spoke to earlier, who was talking about this, Zab, yes. That's right,
yes,
who was saying, well, they're planning to, they'd love to go over to France as a bunch of British women and to buy bikinis and to wear it on the beach, to stand up for women. Well, I dare you. Get on a plane, go to Jeddah, go and walk around the streets wearing a pair of hot pants and a skimpy top. I dare you to do the same. And if you're not prepared to do the same for women over there, then why are you going onto this beach in France? Is it because ultimately the French police will only do so much to you? You go to Jeddah and they'll thrash you with a stick to within an inch of your life and you'll end up being put in prison? Could that be the reason? And surely it's exactly the same argument. If they have laws in Jeddah about what women wear, then when you go to that country, you respect those laws. In the same way that if the French, as a secular country, have decided for whatever reason they don't want to see women wearing bikinis on the beach, then that's down to them and you respect their laws.
Well, the statement speaks for itself. We should. As an individual, you should obey the laws in this country, whichever country you go to. It's as simple as that, as I see it. The use, I think the lady of the mayor of Nice was saying that the Muslims continued to live there without any problems until this bikini came on the scene, then became a political statement. The importation of Wahhabism, which is a form of Muslim prayer, which I understand has now come over to here, seems to be at contradiction to the main Muslim faith. And I understand that Muslims are not allowed or should not contradict their brothers as in male and female. And so a lot of the time people don't speak out about their true, honest feelings. But
thank you very much, Tim, for your call this morning. Mary's in Dunstable. Hello, Mary.
Hello.
Hi. What would you like to say?
I think it was wrong what the French did. I think it was wrong what they did with Charlie Hebdo, and they reaped repercussions because they insulted their prophet. Tell me, what is so wrong with her wearing a bikini? Who does it offend?
So do you think ultimately they're being provocational?
Yes, totally. If she wants to wear a bikini, then so what? You see enough women walking down the street barely dressed, which I find offensive, and I'm English, but I've also lived in a Muslim country.
Well, then surely you will recognise that in a Muslim country, they have laws. You dress in that way.
No, I lived in a very democratic Muslim country.
Oh, okay. Well, if you didn't...
They had English beaches. If you want to go and wear your bikini or your mankini, you can do it. Arabs had their own beach.
Right. But what,
and you just respected it.
But so what's wrong with the French saying, on the beach in Nice, we don't want people wearing a bikini?
Yeah, but you tell me why. What is wrong with her wearing a bikini?
Well, you tell me why. Where was it you lived?
I lived in Kuwait for 24
years.
You
tell me why in Kuwait they said to women that they couldn't wear a bikini on an Arab beach.
They could do. Oh, they could. But then they would get the men looking at them, and they would get the women look at them, and it would make them probably feel embarrassed. There were a lot of women that used to go to the Arab beaches wearing bikinis, but they weren't. They didn't have the Matawa police come with a stick. That is only in Jeddah. That is only in Saudi Arabia.
So have Jeddah got it wrong as well?
Well, Jeddah is Jeddah. Saudi Arabia is a different country.
No,
totally different with their own laws.
Yeah, but you have they got it wrong?
I wouldn't go to Saudi Arabia.
But is it acceptable for them to make their own rules and for the people in that country to abide by those rules?
They're an Islamic country.
Okay, and
they have their rules.
And is France a secular country?
France is France.
France is a secular country.
I think France stirs up its own trouble.
Well, they may do. They may do. I think maybe there's a very good argument to suggest that it's provocational. But France is a secular country.
Ask a lot of women, Jonathan, if women like to see men in mankinis. I find that offensive. I find it quite offensive that I see women on the beach barely wearing anything with their bottoms all hanging out. They do that now with their own modern dress. At least the Islamic faith, the proper Islamic faith, does tell you to cover your hair, not your face. Yes,
Okay.
take away the burqa, the face covering, because that is not written in the Quran. It depends how you interpret it. Depends your mindset.
And
at least their religion teaches them modesty.
And is a swimming costume and a sarong, for example, on the beach, is that not modest?
What do you mean? Is that not modest?
Well, if a woman were,
with a sarong?
you've just asked me a question. You're not letting me finish answering.
Yes.
If a woman was on a beach with a swimming costume and, for example, a sarong, is that not perfectly modest?
That's probably modest, yes.
Right. So why is there a need to wear a burkini that covers your entire body apart from your hands, your feet, and your face?
Because her religion is different to a Christian.
But if it's down to dressing modestly and there's nothing immodest about wearing a swimming costume and a sarong, then why not wear that?
That is not immodest, no. But go to a beach. Wasn't it France that used to have the topless beaches? Didn't they have their own little beach there that only topless people would go to?
Yeah, there are lots of beaches in Europe where you can go topless.
Accept people for who they are and accept their religion.
But
All
it's their country.
I think France are going to have repercussions because of this, like they did with Charlie
Mary,
Hebdo.
it's their country.
They
If the French,
their profits.
if the French want to tell people what they can and cannot wear on their own beach, then that's down to the French, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yes, I agree with you. But I think the law is an ass.
Okay, well, you're perfectly entitled to think that. Thank you very much indeed. The former UKIP leader Nigel Farage has been missing from his local pub of late, as he's been off in America, apparently trying to carve out a new career for himself. In fact, yesterday he was cheered as a hero of independence as he spoke before an audience of 15,000 Donald Trump supporters.
I am going right now to invite onto the stage the man behind Brexit and a man who led brilliantly the United Kingdom Independence Party in this fight and won despite all odds, despite horrible name-calling, despite so many obstacles. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nigel Farage.
I think that you have a fantastic opportunity here with this campaign. You can go out. You can beat the pollsters. You can beat the commentators. You can beat Washington. And you'll do it by doing what we did for Brexit in Britain. We had our own people's army of ordinary citizens who went out and delivered leaflets, who went to meet people where they worked and where they socialised, who convinced and inspired people to go out, if this was the one and only time in their life, and to vote for change. So my advice to you, if you want change in this country, you better get your walking boots on, you better get out there campaigning. And remember, anything is possible if enough decent people are prepared to stand up against the establishment. Thank you very much indeed.
Wow. Thank you, Nigel. What a job.
Well, I'm interested to hear from you today. Has Nigel Farage gone up or down in your estimation by supporting Donald Trump? Scott Lucas is Professor of American Politics at the University of Birmingham. Good morning to you, Scott.
Good morning.
Good morning. What do you think about the fact that Donald Trump has got involved with Nigel Farage, or vice versa?
Well, I think the two men are remarkably similar in some ways. They certainly are very confident of themselves, and they certainly like to throw out a line first and then ask questions later about what it means. That said, I think it's been unusual Trump inviting Farage over. I think what the Trump campaign was trying to do was like this idea of, Nigel was an underdog in Britain. No one expected him to win, and we're underdogs here. We're fighting the establishment just like Nigel did, and he fought Europe, and we're fighting, I don't know, the Muslims or the Chinese or the Mexicans. But I'm not quite sure that many of those folks in Mississippi actually have heard of Brexit or Nigel Farage. So it was a bit of an unusual setting. It'll be a bit of 15 seconds more of fame for Farage. I'm not sure if it really does much for the Trump campaign.
I'm a little bit confused about Nigel Farage because I thought he wanted his country back. I thought that this was a patriot who was more than happy to leave the limelight and just wanted to enjoy his life down the pub in Great Britain, and yet it would appear he's now over in America and wants to forge a new career for himself.
No one can resist the lure of the spotlight for long, but I think there's a broader story beyond this. To be honest with you, I think Nigel Farage got something unexpected. He got what he had campaigned for, the one issue he had really fought for, which is to get the UK out of the EU, and then I think he blinked. I think he didn't know what you then do. What are your economic policies? What do you honestly do about immigration? How are you actually going to manage this? And I think he took the easy way out and said, well, I'm just going to step down out of politics for a while. I don't think he'll stay away. I think the lure will be too great for him to come back. I don't know in what role.
So you don't think the Americans will snap him up?
No, absolutely not. I'm serious.
Why not?
I come from next door. I come from Alabama, next door to Mississippi, and I was watching that video, and those folks were going, my Lord, what exactly are you saying?
Well, I did wonder, do people in Mississippi know what walking boots are?
No, absolutely not.
Don't they all drive everywhere?
No, we got dirt stompers, is what we call them, right? As we go through the farms.
Get your walking boots on.
Yeah, he's like, okay, if you're going to talk to me about my big old thick boots, yeah, you're okay, Nigel, but...
Right. Well, it'll be very interesting to see what happens, and thank you very much indeed for your time. There's Scott Lucas, who's the Professor of American Politics at the University of Birmingham.